I recently heard the story of a contest that was held in the woods of Canada up in northern Alberta. And it was a contest to see whose draft horse could pull the greatest amount of weight. The festivities are going strong. People are sizing up, calculating, wagering on their favorite. And when all the dust cleared, the winning horse pulled a little over 9,000 pounds. And the one that came in second was very close, almost 9,000 pounds. And then someone said in the post-contest postulating, I wonder how much both horses could pull together. Heads snapped, eyes sparkled, and people began to place their bets. Most of the bets were around 18,000 pounds. Some just below, some just above again. Well, the horses were hooked together. They gave a mighty pull, and together they pulled. Well, think about that for a minute. Before I tell you the answer, a number of years ago, many, many years ago, my uncle, Bill Greer, after recuperating in the hospital in London, England for over 6 months from the injuries he sustained while attacking the French harbor on D-Day, attacking the Germans coming in on D-Day, came home, took his mustering out pay, and he bought a farm. He bought a farm in a place called Carter County, Missouri. Carter County, Missouri is about as close to the center, the middle of the United States as you can possibly get. It's red clay country. It's in the foothills of the Ozark Mountains. Now I'm wondering if any of you can guess why he bought the farm where he did. Now, when I've asked audiences, hundreds of thousands of people, this question, often they say, away from the ocean. Well, it's definitely away from the ocean. And I hear some other interesting guesses. But the answer, of course, to the question is he went home. He bought a farm very close to where he'd grown up. In other words, he went to the place that we're all attracted to. He went back to his comfort zone. He didn't use a decision-making grid where I bet you I can buy land in Idaho that will get this much yield for this price, or in southern Ohio for this price with this much yield, or in southern Indiana for this price and this much yield, or over in Illinois for this price with this much yield. He didn't go through that kind of a scientific decision-making model. He went home. And after he'd gotten home, he, of course, bought that farm. He, of course, wanted to begin to farm it. Well, there's something you couldn't buy in late 45, early 46 that's central to farming. You know what it is? Again, I've asked many audiences that question. I get lots and lots of guesses. Well, the answer is, when I tell you, you're going to say, of course. The answer is you couldn't buy a tractor. There were no tractors to be had. So what did he do? He did the thing that my granddad, his dad, had done before him. He bought a couple of mares. He hitched them together and he began to try to farm that old place. Now, I was there one morning, one weekend, and when I got up, I slept in that morning. When I got up and walked out into the kitchen, my Aunt Ruth was cooking on the wood-burning stove. Now, I won't emphasize to you that I was very young at the time, but I do remember this incident. I said, where's Uncle Bill? And she said, he's out on the farm. He's out plowing the field. He's been out there for several hours. When he came in a few minutes later, he was livid. He was infuriated. And he said, when I go back out there this afternoon, I'm going to put Bess in the barn. She can rest all afternoon. I'm going to make Mabel do all the plowing. And why was he so upset? Because it was his opinion that Mabel had been sauntering along beside Bess all morning, not in the vernacular, not in harness. In other words, they weren't working as a team. One was just letting the other do all the work. And it was his intention to train that mare. You do that stuff with me, you'll get to do all the work. Well, I don't know anything about training mares or training horses, but I've had many of my classes tell me, yeah, that's basically how you do it. I do know a little bit about human beings, and what I know about human beings is this. When we feel let down, we will let up. You may be thinking, Larry, you don't know me that well. I'm going to continue to do my very best. I don't care, and I hope that you are that kind of person. But the average person, if they feel others around them are letting them down, they will start to let up. Well, how much did those two horses pull together? The answer to that question is given on page 116 of the book, Empowering Leadership. And on page 116, it gives you the number. I'm not going to give you that number today. If you'd like to know the number, you can find it in this book. I'm very happy to give you a complimentary copy of the book if you can guess the right answer. All you need to do is send that answer to Turbo Leadership Systems. And if your answer most closely matches or is the answer that's in this book, we'll happily give you a copy. The only condition is only one copy per company. Let me just say to you this. It was considerably, I will give you a clue. It's considerably more than 18. Now, when I've asked audiences this question, my average answer is right around 18 or 19,000. And it is considerably more than that. Now, occasionally, I'll have someone who, when I ask them to write the answer down, who will guess 0. How in the world could they conclude that when these two horses were pulled together, they would pull 0? Well, you know the answer, of course. They're thinking they're pulling in opposite directions. And I just want to emphasize to you, for you to get a 0, they'd have to be both giving it their best shot, right? Otherwise, you're going to get a 2, a 6, a 10, or something. But if they're both giving all they've got in the opposite directions, you're going nowhere. Well, it may appear or feel like sometimes that's what's happening in our companies, but I don't think that's ever happening. Think about it. Another way to think about it is in these terms. Let's just say for a moment that we had, let's say the manufacturing department pulling in this direction with 9,000 pounds thrust and marketing pulling in this direction with 9,000 pounds thrust. If that were the case, what direction are we going in? Well, you know the answer, of course. You're going in a 45-degree angle. And what is your thrust power? Well, if you're an engineer, you know how to calculate that. And the answer is a little over 11,000 pounds, maybe around not quite 12,000 pounds. Well, in that instance, you do not have the sum of the parts because the sum of the parts would be 18, right? You've actually lost some of the parts. Synergy, by the way, is defined as, it's not a word we use every day, so I don't expect you necessarily to have a dictionary definition on the tip of your tongue, but we know the definition. It comes, by the way, from the Greek word ergo, which means working together. And synergy is defined as the whole is greater, right? The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. That's what synergy gives us. Well, in this case, we don't even have the sum of the parts. And sometimes it may feel like we have departments who are pulling at right angle. I don't think that happens either. This is what I think is most common in organizations. And in this case, as we can see, these two, let's say it's production with 9,000 pounds thrust and marketing with 9,000 pounds thrust. And in that case, the arrows are essentially going in the same direction, right? But they're not 100% parallel. And if something isn't done to correct this over time, what's going to happen? They're going to get further and further apart. Well, I showed this to my friend Telis Labsa, who is the president of ProTech. They make cab protectors for over-the-highway trucks. And while I was working with his management team, he looked at this once and he said, Larry, that looks like a 15-degree variance. Well, I don't know if it's a 15-degree variance or not, but whatever it is, he's an engineer, he took his little calculator, he calculated it, and he said, if, in fact, that's a 15-degree variance, you're pulling with about 17,000 pounds thrust. Well, let me just tell you, folks, that what you achieve when you have 100% parallel, you get rid of that 15% variance or that small variance that's there, and I'll tell you something, the results are dramatic, they are profound, because you have the magic of synergy. And you know something? You can't buy synergy. It's something you must create. That's what leaders do. They create synergy. And when you take a look at the answer, should your answer be close enough, you will discover that it's profound, and it can make a profound difference in your company when you find a way to create synergistic teamwork. And now I'd like to wrap up this piece by a simple reminder. When you get what you want in your struggle for self and the world calls you king for a day, then go to the mirror and look at yourself. See what that guy has to say. For it isn't your mother or brother whose judgment on you must pass, but the person whose verdict counts most in your life is the guy staring back from the glass. You can be like Jack Horner and chisel a plum and think you're a wonderful guy, but the guy in the glass says you're a bum if you can't look him straight in the eye.